It was supposed to be just another Sunday. I woke up early, like always, brewed the same strong coffee, let the dog out, and sat for a minute before the chaos of the day began. My wife was already dressed. She looked beautiful, even with her hair pulled back and no makeup. She packed her Bible and my glasses in the church bag without saying a word, like clockwork. We'd been doing this routine for years. We weren't the most vocal Christians, but we were steady. Church wasn't just a tradition for us. It was an anchor, especially after what our family had been through. And honestly, I needed the peace it gave me. Life outside those stained glass windows had been anything but peaceful. The ride to church was quiet. We passed the same gas station, waved at the same old man walking his dog, and pulled into the same parking spot. The familiarity was comforting, predictable, safe. We walked in, nodded at the greeters, and took our usual seats, third row left side. I always liked that spot. The sun hit the stained glass just right, and during worship, it felt like heaven itself was watching. The choir began to sing, and everyone stood. I tried to focus, tried to let the music take over, but there was this heaviness in my chest I couldn't explain. I chalked it up to stress, bills, work, maybe the conversation I'd had with my brother 2 weeks ago. He hadn't returned my calls since then. Something had felt off. 15 minutes in, the pastor stepped up. He opened his Bible, started reading a passage from Luke, but something was off. He kept pausing, not dramatic pauses for effect, real, weighty silences that made the air thick. Then, out of nowhere, he stopped mid-sentence. He looked directly at me. At first, I thought I was imagining it, but then he stepped forward slowly and said, "You need to forgive the one who took from you." My heart dropped. I blinked, confused. My wife turned to me, her brow furrowed. Her hand reached for mine. I didn't squeeze back. Then he said it again, louder this time. "Your brother stole from you." The room went silent. Not the usual respectful quiet. This was stunned, paralyzing silence, like the whole church had turned to stone. I looked around. Eyes were on me, some confused, some sympathetic, some like they knew. My chest tightened. My mouth went dry. I tried to speak but couldn't. I wanted to stand, to ask what he meant, but my legs wouldn't move. Then the pastor did something even stranger. He stepped down from the pulpit and walked toward me. He held an envelope. He said, "God told me to give you this," and he handed it to me. I didn't take it right away. My hands were frozen. My brain was a tornado of questions. What was happening? What did he mean, stole? Why here? Why now? Why me? I finally took the envelope, but I didn't open it. I couldn't, because whatever was inside wasn't going to be just paper. It was going to be a wound, one I didn't know I had. The room still hadn't moved. My wife whispered, "Open it!" But I just stared at it. My brother's face flashed in my mind. Our last conversation, the silence that followed, and now this? I couldn't explain it, but something in my spirit shifted. And that's when everything began to unravel. Before all this, before the envelope, before the silence in church, before I ever heard those words from the pastor, there was just me and my brother. His name is Marcus. He's 2 years younger than me, but growing up, he always seemed older. Not because he was wiser, Lord knows he wasn't, but because he was bold, fearless in a way that made people notice. If I was the steady one, the rule follower, Marcus was the fire, the spark that always lit up the room, or set it on fire. We were close once, real close. Mom used to joke that we were twins born 2 years apart. We shared everything, toys, secrets, even punishments. If one of us got in trouble, the other usually wasn't far behind. And back then, we never turned on each other. We were a team. Our house wasn't perfect, but it was filled with love. Dad worked long hours at the warehouse, and Mom made sure we were at every church service, every youth group, every Sunday school class. Faith wasn't just taught, it was lived. We prayed together before bed, sang hymns at the dinner table, and even as kids, we believed. But things started shifting when we hit high school. Marcus changed. He got into crowds I didn't know, started skipping classes, lying, first little things, then big ones. I tried to talk to him, but he'd just brush me off. "You're not Dad," he'd say. Or worse, "You think you're better than me?" The truth is, I didn't think I was better. I just didn't want to lose him. He still had that charm, the kind that could talk his way out of anything, but it started to feel like he was using it more to escape consequences than to build connection. He'd sweet-talk teachers, manipulate friends, and I just kept covering for him. I'd lie to Mom, make excuses when he didn't show up. I told myself I was protecting him, but really, I was afraid of the truth, that the Marcus I knew was slipping away. After graduation, I got a job at the auto shop near our house. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest work. Marcus tried college, dropped out after a semester, said it wasn't for him. He bounced from job to job, borrowed money he never paid back. But I always gave it, because that's what brothers do, right? I watched him drift, sometimes into things I didn't want to know about. People whispered. There were stories about debt, about gambling, maybe worse. But every time he came to me, every time he needed something, I gave. Not because I was naive, but because I remembered the boy who used to sneak out with me to catch fireflies at night. The brother who cried with me when our dog died. The kid who once stood up for me when I was being bullied after school. How do you stop loving someone like that? The last real conversation we had, the one before everything, was about Mom's will. She had passed the year before, and we were settling everything. I thought we were on the same page. She had left the house to both of us. I wanted to sell and split it. Marcus didn't. He wanted to keep it. Said he needed stability. Said I had a job, a family, a life, that he had nothing. I told him we could work something out. Maybe I'd rent it to him cheap. Maybe we'd find a way. But I remember looking at him and feeling distance, not just physically, but in the way he looked at me, like I was a stranger, like I was standing between him and something he wanted. Looking back, maybe I was. After that talk, he stopped calling, stopped showing up. No holiday visit, no birthday text, just silence. I tried to reach out, but it was like he vanished. And that silence, it hurt. Because even through everything, even with all the lies and disappointments, I never stopped hoping he'd turn it around. I never stopped believing he could. I don't know when things got so broken. I don't know the exact moment Marcus stopped seeing me as his brother and started seeing me as something else. Maybe a threat, maybe a rival, maybe just a reminder of who he wasn't. But what I do know is this: the love never left me, even when the trust did. And maybe that's why the betrayal cut so deep, because it didn't come from an enemy. It came from the one person I spent my whole life trying to protect. It's easy to talk about betrayal when it comes from someone you expect it from, a coworker, a stranger. But when it comes from blood, when it comes from the person who used to share your room, your memories, your childhood, it hits different. I remember one night when we were kids. I must have been 10, Marcus 8. We got scared during a thunderstorm. The power went out. He crawled into my bed and whispered, "I got you, okay? I won't let anything happen." And I believed him. Now, years later, I sat in that church holding an envelope that proved something had happened. And maybe it had been happening all along. And the worst part? I still wasn't ready to stop loving him. That's what makes a story like this hard to tell. Because before the breaking, there was a bond. And it was real. Sunday mornings had always been a kind of sanctuary, a sacred pause in the chaos of the week. But that Sunday, it didn't feel peaceful. It felt tense, like the air itself was holding its breath. I remember waking up with a weight in my chest. I thought maybe it was just a bad dream lingering, but it stuck with me through breakfast. My wife noticed. She asked if I was okay. I told her I was just tired. But even then, I think I knew something was coming. We got to church a few minutes early. People smiled, shook hands, passed out bulletins. The same woman who always complimented my tie said, "God bless you, brother." I smiled back, but it felt hollow. Everything felt distant, like I was underwater. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, not in a paranoid way, but like something was waiting for me, watching me, quietly breathing down my neck. The worship was beautiful. The choir sang "Great is Thy Faithfulness," one of Mom's favorites. It made my eyes sting. I closed them, let the music wash over me, and tried to forget everything outside those walls. Tried to forget Marcus. Tried to forget the weight in my chest. But the weight didn't lift. Then Pastor Reynolds got up to speak. He started normal. A passage from Luke. He talked about the prodigal son, about restoration, about coming home. And for a moment, I thought the message was for me. That maybe this was a sign that Marcus would come back. That maybe God hadn't forgotten him. that maybe this was God's way of telling me not to give up. But then, 15 minutes in, Pastor stopped mid-sentence. Not like he'd lost his place. No, this was intentional. He looked around, not scanning the crowd. No, he was searching, looking for someone. His eyes swept the sanctuary like a searchlight. Then they landed on me. He said, "You need to forgive the one who took from you." It hit like a punch. I blinked. My hands gripped the edge of the pew. My wife glanced at me, her mouth slightly open. I could feel the room holding its breath. He repeated it, louder this time. "Your brother stole from you." A collective gasp rippled through the sanctuary, the kind of moment when time bends. People turned to look at me. Some whispered, others stared. I could feel heat rise in my face. My heart pounded so loudly it drowned out everything else. I wanted to stand up, to shout, "What are you talking about?" But my body didn't move. My mind was racing. How did he know? Who told him? Why now? And then Pastor Reynolds stepped off the stage. I thought he was walking away, maybe overwhelmed, maybe finished, but he wasn't. He was coming down the center aisle, and he was holding something in his hand. An envelope, the kind that looks like it holds something heavy. Not just papers, but weight. He walked straight toward me. No hesitation, no fear. When he reached me, he stopped and said in a calm, deliberate voice, "God told me to give you this." Then he handed it to me. The envelope was thick, cream-colored, sealed. My hands didn't move at first. I couldn't even breathe. I was too aware of every eye in the room on me. My wife looked at me, tears forming in her eyes. I could see confusion in her face, but also something else. Recognition, like some part of her already knew what this was about. I finally reached out and took it. My hands trembled as I held it, but I didn't open it. Not yet. The pastor stood there for a second longer. Then, without another word, he turned around and walked back to the front of the sanctuary. He didn't return to the sermon. He didn't finish the message. He sat down in his chair and closed his Bible. Silence fell. That's when it really hit me. The entire room was waiting for me. What was I supposed to do? Open it there? In front of everyone? Or walk out? Collapse? Scream? But I didn't do any of that. I just sat there, envelope in hand, heart pounding so hard it hurt. I stared at the seal, at the way it was folded, at how ordinary it looked for something that felt so enormous. People around me began to whisper, quiet murmurs. I heard one woman say, "Is that the older brother?" Another said, "Did you know his brother took money?" My ears burned. My throat tightened. I heard my name from somewhere behind me. Not a shout, just a soft voice. An usher maybe, someone concerned. But it only added to the heat building in my chest. My wife leaned in and whispered, "Do you want to leave?" I couldn't speak. I nodded. We stood up and walked out. No one stopped us. No one said a word. Just eyes. So many eyes. Outside, the sun was too bright. The parking lot too loud. I sat on the passenger side of the car and stared at the envelope in my hands. I turned it over. There was no name, no handwriting, just that heavy cream paper. My wife didn't push me. She just sat there, hands on the wheel, waiting. A couple passed in front of the car. I recognized them from Bible study. The woman smiled faintly. The man looked away. They knew something had happened. They just didn't know what. Finally, I said, "I think he knows." "Who?" she asked, even though I think she already knew. "Pastor." "About Marcus." "About the will." "About everything." She nodded slowly. "Then maybe this is God's way of dealing with it." I didn't respond, because honestly, I wasn't sure if this was God, or just another way for everything to fall apart. And yet, I couldn't deny it. Something in my soul had shifted. That moment in the church, the look in the pastor's eyes, the weight of the envelope, it was like I'd been cracked open. There's a kind of truth that doesn't arrive gently. It doesn't knock. It breaks the door down. And I knew, whatever was inside that envelope wasn't just information. It was transformation. And once I opened it, I could never go back. I held it tight. And in that moment, before I even opened it, I already felt the cost of knowing. I didn't open the envelope until the next morning. I left it on the kitchen table that night, untouched. I couldn't sleep. I kept waking up, hearing Pastor Reynolds' voice echoing in my head. "Your brother stole from you," over and over again. I'd look over at my wife. She was quiet, but I could tell she wasn't sleeping either. There's a certain type of silence that settles in a house after betrayal. It's not loud, it's not violent, but it eats at you. It wraps around everything like fog. I could barely taste my dinner, barely hear the television. Everything just blurred. The next morning, after the kids had gone off to school, I made a cup of coffee, sat down, and stared at the envelope again. My fingers hovered over the flap for what felt like forever. When I finally tore it open, I half expected it to be empty. A test, a message, something abstract. But it wasn't. Inside were bank statements, photocopies, withdrawal slips, scanned checks, transactions linked to Mom's estate, accounts I didn't even know existed, all with Marcus's name on them, all forged. I remember this one check. It had my signature, or what looked like it, except I knew I hadn't signed it. I stared at it, trying to make sense of it. The handwriting was close enough to pass, but I knew. And just like that, all the memories I had tried to suppress started pouring back. The tense conversation about Mom's will, the missing paperwork, the sudden silence. It wasn't just a feeling anymore. It was fact. He had taken from me. He had stolen money meant for both of us, for our children, for our future, for the legacy our mother left behind. That legacy, it meant something. It wasn't just money. It was her life, her sacrifices. All those nights she worked 2 jobs to make sure we had what we needed. All those church bake sales, those yard sales, those late nights when she counted every penny at the kitchen table. That money wasn't just a fund. It was her final gift to us. And he took it. My heart sank deeper with every page. Every new piece of evidence was like another cut, another betrayal. And yet, strangely, I didn't cry. Not yet. I was too stunned, too hollow. The last page of the envelope was a letter. Not from Pastor Reynolds, from Marcus. Handwritten, sloppy, but real. And the moment I read the first line, the anger I'd been holding back hit me like a wave. He wrote, "I didn't know how else to tell you." It wasn't an apology. It was an excuse. He said he needed it more. That life had been harder on him. That I had everything, a house, a wife, kids, and he had nothing. That Mom had always favored me. That the church never accepted him. That God seemed to always be on my side, not his. And then he ended it with the line, "I hope you can forgive me someday." No acknowledgement of what he did. No responsibility. Just guilt. Passive. Distant. Like he didn't steal. Like he was the one who had been hurt. I folded the letter, slowly, and placed it back in the envelope. And that's when the tears came. Not for the money. Not even for the betrayal. But for the loss of the brother I thought I still had. Because now, I knew, he wasn't coming back. Not really. Not as the boy who used to defend me at recess. Not as the teenager who snuck in late and made me swear not to tell Mom. Not even as the man who promised he'd do better next time. He had chosen something else. And it wasn't me. And maybe that was the hardest truth to face. I sat there for a long time, just breathing, just existing in the space between hurt and healing. My wife came in, sat across from me, didn't say a word. She just took my hand. "I knew something was wrong," she said softly, "but I didn't want it to be this." Neither did I. We didn't talk for a while. There was nothing left to say, just grief. Not the kind that comes from death, the kind that comes from losing someone who is still alive. Eventually, I stood up and walked to the living room. I stared at a photo on the mantel. It was me and Marcus as kids, sitting on the porch, popsicles in our hands, legs dirty from playing in the yard. We were laughing, carefree. I tried to remember what we were laughing about. I couldn't. That moment, that bond, felt so far away now, like it belonged to different people entirely. Forgiveness. That's what Pastor talked about. That's what the church expects, what faith demands. But no one tells you how hard it is to forgive when the wound is still bleeding. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean excusing. It means choosing mercy, even when justice feels more satisfying. And I wasn't there yet. I wanted to forgive him. I really did. But in that moment, it felt impossible. And yet, somewhere deep in my soul, I knew this wasn't the end of the story. Not yet. That letter stayed in my jacket pocket for days. I couldn't bring myself to read it again, but I couldn't throw it away either. I carried it like a stone tied to my chest. Every time I reached into my pocket, it was there. A reminder. A question. What do you do when someone confesses, but it doesn't feel like repentance? That's what kept playing in my head. Marcus had admitted it, but not in a way that restored anything. He wanted forgiveness without rebuilding the trust, without even saying sorry. I took long walks that week. I'd go down to the old park where we used to play as kids. I'd sit on the bench near the swings and just remember. Not the betrayal, not the envelope, but before. I tried to remember Marcus laughing, barefoot in the grass, chasing me with a stick he called a sword. And slowly, something began to shift. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but something close. A softening, a loosening in my chest. One afternoon, I went back to church. It was empty. Weekday afternoon, no service, no music, just stillness. Pastor Reynolds was in his office. When he saw me walk in, he didn't say anything. He just stood up, embraced me, and said, "God's not finished." That's all it took. I sat with him for over an hour, told him everything. My confusion, my rage, my guilt for still loving Marcus, my guilt for hating him too. I told him how I wasn't sleeping, how I avoided looking at the photo of Mom on the wall, how I kept expecting Marcus to call, even though I knew he wouldn't. He didn't offer advice. He didn't quote scripture. He just listened. Sometimes, that's more powerful than words. Then he handed me something else, a second envelope. "This was left anonymously," he said, "after you walked out." I looked at him. "From Marcus?" He shook his head. "I don't know. Could be someone else who saw your pain and wanted to eat." Inside were $500 in cash. No note, no name. I stared at it for a long time. I didn't know what it meant. A peace offering? A gesture? A coincidence? But somehow, it broke me. Not in pain, in release. It wasn't about the money. It was about grace, undeserved, unexpected. Something inside me cracked open in that moment. The part of me that had been holding everything so tightly, the bitterness, the fear, the grief, began to let go. I went back to that same park the next morning. This time, I brought the letter with me. I sat on the bench. I read it again, slowly, line by line. I felt the weight of every sentence, the cowardice, the pain, the longing. I didn't excuse it. I didn't minimize it. But for the first time, I didn't read it like a victim. I read it like a brother. And that changed everything. I thought about the difference between guilt and shame. Marcus lived in both. And I realized I had too. I had carried the shame of losing him, the shame of being the good son who couldn't save his brother, the guilt of letting Mom down by not protecting what she left behind. But none of that was mine to carry. That money, it could be replaced. But Marcus? I wasn't sure. And maybe I'd never get him back the way he was. But I could still choose to see him as more than his mistakes. I could still choose grace. A few days later, I wrote him a letter. Not to excuse him, not to absolve him, just to speak the truth. I told him how much he hurt me, how angry I was, how betrayed I felt. But I also told him something else. I told him I loved him, that I always would, that I didn't forgive him because he deserved it. I forgave him because I couldn't carry the weight anymore, and I mailed it. I don't know if he'll ever read it. I don't know if he'll ever write back. But that's not what this part of the story is about. It's about what changed in me. Because what was inside the first envelope revealed the betrayal. What was inside the second one revealed my heart. And in between those pages, I found God again. Not in the church, not in the sermon, not even in the pastor's words, but in the quiet, in the choice to let go, in the moment when love felt more powerful than revenge. That's what real healing looks like. It's not forgetting. It's remembering and still choosing mercy. There's something strange about the aftermath of emotional storms. It's quiet, not peaceful, not yet, but quieter than the chaos. Like standing outside after the rain, everything soaked, the air still humming, but no more thunder. That's what the days felt like after I sent Marcus that letter. Nothing dramatic happened. He didn't show up on my doorstep. He didn't call. He didn't write back. But something inside me changed. I started sleeping again. Not every night, but enough. My appetite came back. My wife smiled more. I laughed with the kids. It was like letting go of that weight made room for other things. Joy, hope, softness. Healing didn't come all at once. It came in slow, subtle waves, like little ripples moving across a still pond, until you realize the surface is calm again. I'd still think about Marcus, especially on Sundays, especially during worship, but it didn't sting the same way. The memories had edges, but they weren't blades anymore. One morning, I found myself praying for him. Not the kind of prayer where you ask God to fix someone. The kind where you just hope they're okay. Where you surrender control. Where you trust that even if you never speak again, their soul is still worth fighting for. That's when I knew I was healing. And I realized, healing doesn't always mean reconciliation. Sometimes, it means peace in the absence of resolution. Sometimes, the truth doesn't fix the past, it just frees you from it. Forgiveness is strange like that. People think it's a door you open once and step through. But really, it's a hallway, long, repetitive. And some days, you have to walk it again and again. There are still moments I feel the ache. When I pass by the old house. When my son asks about his uncle. When I hear someone say, "Family over everything," and I smile, but not all the way. And that's okay. Not everything heals perfect. Not everything needs to. What matters is that it heals honestly. I still don't know what Marcus is doing today. Maybe he's still running. Maybe he read my letter and threw it away. Maybe he didn't. But that's not where the story ends. The real ending? It's in the quiet mornings when I'm drinking coffee without bitterness. It's in the way I hug my kids tighter. It's in the way I look at my wife and say thank you, just because. It's in the faith that got stretched, torn, tested, but didn't break. Because the truth, it hurt. But it also healed. And if you're watching this, and you're holding pain like I was, pain from someone who was supposed to love you, I want you to hear me, you're not alone. And sometimes, the first step to healing is telling the truth. Even if your voice shakes, even if no one else believes you, even if the one who hurt you never says sorry, tell the truth. Let it out. Speak it aloud. Write it in a journal. Tell a pastor. Tell a friend. Cry if you need to. Yell if you have to. But don't keep it buried. Because buried pain becomes poison. And you deserve to be free. We all carry stories we're afraid to speak. But I promise you, someone needs to hear yours. And maybe, just maybe, it'll help them find their freedom too. And if you're still in the thick of it, still holding your own envelope, so to speak, I want to say this: God sees you, even when others overlook you, even when the people who were supposed to protect you failed, even when forgiveness feels like a mountain you can't climb. He is still with you, still present, still working. You don't need to be perfect to begin healing. You just need to be honest. And that honesty, that's where redemption begins. If this story meant something to you, if it reminded you of someone, or something you've been holding on to, I hope you'll share it. Leave a comment. Let someone else know they're not alone. And don't forget to subscribe. We've got an empty chair waiting for stories like yours.